All right, everybody. It's almost 4 p.m. West Coast time on Friday, April 11th. So yesterday we got a unanimous decision from the United States Supreme Court that the government must return Mr. Abrego Garcia, who is the Maryland father who has been married to an American citizen for over a decade. They have kids. He's been working here in the United States for that whole time. He was deported. He was abducted and disappeared into an El Salvadorian prison on March 15th. Yesterday, the United States Supreme Court unanimously ordered the Trump administration to bring him back to the United States to facilitate his return to the United States. The trial court level judge, in that case, they remanded it back to her courtroom. Her last name is spelled X-I-N-I-S, I guess, Zinnis. She held a hearing today. Government attorneys, or there was one attorney for the government, I think his name was Drew Ensign, refused to provide any information to the judge about any steps the government has already taken to bring him back. He refused to provide the judge with any information about the steps the government is going to take to bring him back. He refused to provide the judge with any information about where Mr. Garcia is or whether or not he's still alive. This is the second time in this case that the government has sent an attorney to a hearing in front of Judge Zinnis, who was totally unprepared, did not have any relevant information, and could not provide any relevant information to the judge. There were some specific things. He said to this judge that because this court had issued a prior order with a deadline of last Monday. You have to return this guy by midnight last Monday. Obviously, that date has passed. Attorney Ensign for the DOJ said to the judge, "We fundamentally disagree on the status of this court's order." SCOTUS said the deadline is no longer effective. SCOTUS said that SCOTUS remanded it back to the trial court level so the trial court judge could issue a new deadline for return. And it was, I don't know where the DOJ is finding these attorneys who are willing to show up and behave in a way to a federal judge that threatens their law licenses, to be honest with you. When you are representing a client, in this case, Mr. Ensign's client is the federal government, you have an ethical obligation to the court to obtain information from your client that you know the court is looking for, unless it falls under like attorney-client privilege or Fifth Amendment privilege. This court is not asking for any information that is out of line. Where is this guy? Is he alive? What steps have you taken to bring him home? What steps are you going to take to bring him home? None of those fall under self-incrimination or privilege. It's stunning to me the way attorneys for the Department of Justice are behaving with this court. And the judge is now requiring that this attorney file a declaration by Monday answering these questions, and is also requiring the Department of Justice to provide her with daily updates for the answers to these questions. And so we're starting to get some reaction from the legal community. I mean, basically the DOJ and the Trump administration, in a very passive-aggressive way, told this judge to fuck off. We're not going to comply with the Supreme Court's order that orders us to comply with your earlier order, and we're not going to comply with that order either. And so, but from what I know about this judge, Judge Zinnis, she is a very a very no-nonsense judge. She's not going to put up with this shit. You know, she's requiring daily updates from the DOJ. And I said earlier in a TikTok, you know, imagine to yourself why the Trump administration would refuse to bring this guy back to the United States. It would make them look dumb. It would make Donald Trump look weak. It would make Donald Trump appear to a lot of people in the United States as though he did something wrong, as though he made a mistake, and his DOJ made a mistake. His DOJ already admitted they made a mistake by sending this guy to El Salvador in the first place. They've admitted that it was their error that he's there in the first place, and they're still refusing to bring him back. And they're still refusing to provide the court with any information on his whereabouts, his health, or any steps that the DOJ has taken or will take to facilitate his return. They've now been ordered to do that by the trial court and by the United States Supreme Court in a unanimous decision. And second, the DOJ has not yet said in open court whether or not Mr. Garcia is still alive. He was sent by our government to a prison in El Salvador that brags about the fact that no one has ever been released from this prison. Not one single prisoner has ever been released from this prison. It's an incredibly brutal prison. People get killed, beaten, tortured there all the time, and any number of other horrific things. And I read one site that said, you know, up to 100,000 inmates in that prison have died over the life of that prison. And last reason, they don't want this guy talking to the media about the last month of his life. They don't want this guy sitting down with somebody from 60 Minutes. They don't want this guy showing up on the Sunday morning news shows or you know, sitting for a 30-minute long interview with Rachel Maddow and talking about the things that have happened to him over the last month. And so this judge essentially gave them until Monday to comply, the DOJ, and to give her daily updates until they do comply. But it's not looking good right now as far as whether or not Donald Trump and his Department of Justice are going to obey this trial judge and whether or not they're going to obey the United States Supreme Court in a unanimous decision against them. And this is an incredibly scary situation because as part of their argument in this case, the Department of Justice argued that Donald Trump has the authority to deport anybody in the United States, including United States citizens, to that prison in El Salvador, where they will be disappeared, possibly forever. Yeah, that means you and me, guys.